up? On this week's episode of TechSNAP, we'll break down that major Apple SSL flaw and discuss what it means about their overall security posture. Then the Zeus Trojan evolves, and it's a great big batch of your questions and our answers. All that and a heck of a lot more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Everybody, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 151 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on February 27th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, GoDaddy, Ting, and iX Systems. I'll tell you more about those sponsors as this show goes on. And our live stream is powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. You've got to go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Alan. So are the Olympic fever is over for you, I take it?
Well, yeah.
It's passed. Yeah.
We won.
Yeah. Yeah. Canada did win, didn't they? You guys win. Yes. Yeah, you guys won the Olympics.
3-0.
Well, congratulations.
Well, we won hockey, men and women. So the women's was like the 5th Olympics in a row. The men's like the 3rd out of the last 5.
So how did BSD Now go yesterday?
Good.
And who was your guest?
Up the interviews so that we can do... Well, in the edited episode, it'll be Joe Marcus Clark, whose interview we recorded last week.
Oh, okay.
And then this week we recorded next week's interview and the week after that's interview.
Whoa.
To deal with the fact that we're going to be gone for Asia BSDCon, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying to stack up the interviews as fast as we can.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are really rocking through those. That's great. So we'll have that out on Friday morning if you guys haven't seen that yet. You can always watch BSD Live Now on Wednesdays on the JB Live TV stream. We have it on the calendar. And then... it's released for download on Fridays, and I think maybe in a couple of months we'll probably have that release time shortened when we have a dedicated editor. So that'll be even sooner.
That'll be cool.
Well, we have a big show today. Surprise, surprise! Lots of really good feedback this week. I'm really looking forward to our feedback segment. A big roundup. But like always, we got to start with the news, and something that kind of came up and got really big between shows was this whole Apple SSL vulnerability, right? So what's been going on here?
So Apple released an emergency fix for iOS, and then they said the fix for OS X would be out soon, and there was some speculation on what that meant.
Oh, yeah.
But it turns out it came out about 4 days later.
Oh, okay.
Isn't too bad,
Not too bad.
But, that's quite a bit of time where people know about the vulnerability, although your vulnerability is probably worse on a mobile device, so getting it for iOS first is actually was probably better. But,
yeah.
So the flaw was in the certificate verification step used in the SSL library built into the Apple OS, and basically allowed an attacker to sign a certificate with any private key or no key at all, and then that certificate would still be accepted by the device.
Whoa, that's pretty major.
Yeah. So this meant that an attacker could trivially perform a man-in-the-middle attack, intercepting your traffic and between you and some destination over SSL by basically presenting a certificate claiming to be for Gmail, but was signed by a made-up key or whatever.
Yeah.
Because of the way it worked, it could be signed by the wrong private key. It might have also defeated certificate pinning, right? So like the Chrome browser has the pin certificate for Gmail so that a fake certificate for Gmail won't work. Mm-hmm. But if you take the real certificate for Gmail and just sign it with a fake key, I don't think Chrome actually checks for that. So there's some speculation this kind of attack could have been used to get around even some of the security systems built on top of SSL. And it would also so because they could do a fake certificate for Gmail, they could intercept your traffic, send it to there, make you think you're going over SSL, and then pass it on to Google. And because they would have that step in the middle, they'd be able to decrypt your traffic with their certificate, read it, and then encrypt it properly and send it off to Gmail, and then pass the responses back to you.
Lovely.
Right? By basically sitting in the middle there and reading the decrypted version.
Yeah.
Because of that, that would allow them to see your email password, your login and password for Facebook and Twitter and everything else you log in or SSL for, and even like your bank account or whatever. Or if you're buying something, they would see your credit card number.
Yeah. Wow.
And the man-in-the-middle attack with SSL, SSL is specifically designed to stop man-in-the-middle attacks by using the certificate to verify the person you're talking to is actually the person you expect. But it doesn't work when the code doesn't actually verify that properly. And, a man-in-the-middle attack is pretty trivial to perform once you have a way to defeat SSL. right? You just set up a Wi-Fi access point at, a coffee shop or some public space, and people go there and they, free Wi-Fi, jump on and start doing stuff. Like check their email. And you would see their email password.
I don't mean to sound like
email password. You'd be like, I'm going to go to Twitter and try this email address. And now I have their Twitter account or their Facebook account or maybe even something else.
This is a pretty serious flaw and one that could be exploited by bad state actors and by hackers.
Yes.
That's essentially making SSL pointless.
Right. And so when the news of it started to come out, there was the question of whether it's also affected OS 10. And then, so I have a post here where it explains that it does. And a helpful researcher put up a test page that you can go to. If you get an error, then your machine is fixed. If you don't, then you're in trouble.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so OS 10, 10.9.2 was released February 25th, so 2 days ago. And that solves the problem, apparently.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of criticism about that delay. And I think part of the delay is because this update to OS 10 was already in the works. Like, they're fixing a bunch of other stuff that's wrong with Mavericks. And so they're like, well, we'll just wait a couple of days and just have one big update. And so some people have felt like because...
Well,
yeah.
You think one of the other links we have here is the fact that it's unclear how long Apple has known about this flaw, but the CVE number for it was reserved on January 8th. Suggesting they've known about the flaw for almost 2 months. Yeah.
Now, is it possible they reserve a CVE number before they know what a problem is? No, that doesn't seem like that's how the process
if somebody knows there is a problem, they can get one. They might not have figured out how to fix it yet or what exactly the problem was. So yes, but no. Most likely it means that researchers found it, told Apple about it, and they were like, all right, you keep it quiet until we fix it. And then, the fix comes out, and it's like...
And this was just like...
Oh.
So this security update. So I guess I'm looking this guy over at imperialviolet.org. He has like the go-to fail code here. I mean, it's literally like this tiny bit of code.
Right. So yeah, I was just about to get that. The issue is actually caused by a duplicate go-to statement.
Okay.
So you have the code up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people can see.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see there, it's got all these if statements.
Right.
And, it's like, if this is wrong, then go to fail. If this is wrong, go to fail. But you see, one of them has go to fail and then go to fail.
Yeah.
So the problem is there, with the if statements, they're using the lazy convention of not having the curly brace at the end. Right? So if you have an if statement, then it can continue all on one line. And then it means any line after that is back not inside the if statement. If you do explicit curly braces, then you would say, if blah, start block, do all this, end block. But because they didn't use the curly brace, it means that it's like, if this error go to fail, if this error go to fail, then no matter what, go to fail. And then if this other error go to fail, but that never happens because no matter what, you've gone to fail here because the first go to fail is inside this if statement, but the second one isn't. Even though it's tabbed in and it looks like it isn't. And that's why you should always use the explicit curly braces.
So, and this also doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like it should have taken them since the beginning of January to track this down.
Right.
Or fix.
Well, again, part of that was probably we're going to bundle it up with a bunch of other updates.
Mm-hmm. If that's true, that would, to me, really indicate that Apple has a massive cultural problem when it comes to addressing security problems in their operating systems. Because iOS is just, the Mac is not a ginormous market, but it's big. But iOS is huge, and if they've known even about the iOS flaws since, since January, iOS devices...
It needs to be fixed instantly, always.
Yeah, and this is, gosh, I just hope that's not the case. Of course, they won't say.
Part of Apple's code is actually open source, including this particular bit. That's how we have the source code for what the problem was. So somebody helpfully did a diff between OS 10, 10.8.5, and 10.9 to show what other code was added around the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see that, there's a bunch of other changes, and then around line 631 or something like that, there's just this extra go-to added. Now, there's a whole discussion about it over at Hacker News, but it's possible it was just like a merge conflict. Somebody was not quite doing their... SVN properly or whatever, or Git or whatever they were using.
Yeah.
Or, part of the speculation around this was that added on purpose?
Like at the request of the NSA.
Well, likely not. The NSA went to Apple and said, please add this, as they went to one developer and said, sneak this in.
Oh, that would, okay, that's not quite as crazy. That's not so crazy, is it? Because you just have to approach one guy.
Right. Well, you know, it's kind of the same speculation there was around the Debian OpenSSH flaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's like, you could just make this mistake that's innocent enough, but it actually causes irreparable harm.
Yeah, that's a pretty... I mean, think about all the iOS devices. You know,
this flaw, like, it's not something people are regularly going to try. Right? Signing the legitimate Google certificate with a fake key.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's kind of very specific.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably, I could see how it actually...
If you were the only person that knew about it, you could exploit this pretty well.
Or if you had an automated testing suite, you know, like if you were somebody who ran these devices through a series of tests to see where their vulnerabilities were, you might catch something like this really quickly. Well, and then start exploiting it as long as you can.
This particular one, right, but this particular one is probably not a test people would think to do. Maybe. Right, they should have a test. Like, for every if statement in that file should have a test to make sure it's working, I suppose. But
yeah,
you know, it's not a regular type of invalid SSL.
You could see how like internal Q&A would miss it. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, the OS 10.9.2 also fixes a couple other issues related to SSL. The Apple version of curl has a TLS verification problem where when it's checking the, you know, when you go to a website, it checks that the host name matches the certificate. So like, you know, if you try to go to, especially happens when people have too many subdomains or something. But if you try to go to like subdomain.something.com and it's like, that doesn't match the SSL certificate that only says www.something.com. Well, the curl on OS 10 would just not bother doing the check if the host name was an IP address. So it would just connect over SSL and not give you a warning saying that the certificate wasn't valid for that IP address.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So there was a couple of SSL issues in there.
Yeah, this is going to be more and more of a problem as Apple gets a larger and larger deployment footprint. You know, this is a microscope that Microsoft was under for a long time, has been under for a long time.
I have a bunch of other links in here, the Hackers News thread, more analysis from Imperial Violet, an interesting post over at Sputnik about why were there go-to statements in the Apple software in the first place, and explaining why, you know, we always hear that go-tos are bad, but if you even read the follow-up from the guy who originally said that, he's like, people shouldn't be adopting this as a religion. You know. Anyway, and then we have a link to the official Apple announcement where they give absolutely no information about what the problem was.
Now, I did read this morning that 25% of iOS 7 users, I think, right, yeah, have already done the update to their iOS device. I don't know what the stats are for the Mac, but that's pretty good. That's a pretty good upgrade ratio for, you know, something that's been out for a few days. But if you know anybody out there, audience member, get them to update. Because now that people know about this in a wider context, you're going to see more and more people probably trying to take advantage of this. And think about all these iOS devices that attach to open Wi-Fi networks when you go to a restaurant. You know, all sorts of opportunities for somebody to exploit something like that. So do your good citizen part and get people to update if you know anybody out there who hasn't. All right, Alma, why don't I stop and thank Ting.com for sponsoring this week's episode of TechSNAP. Go to techsnap.ting.com to get started. That lets Ting know you heard about it right here on the TechSNAP program. You appreciate them supporting the TechSNAP show. And the best part, it's going to take $25 off your first device. If you already have a device you want to bring with you, like Ting just recently added support for the iPhone 4 and 4S, speaking of iOS devices, then they'll take $25 off your first month of service. Now, what is Ting? Ting is mobile that makes sense. There's no contract with Ting. There's no early termination, and you'll only pay for what you use. I've got my Nexus 5 right here. This is like my personal information center. I'm under all of my different accounts with this thing. I got all my information here. And what I love about this is I think this represents a better way of doing mobile. I bought this directly from Google, from the Play Store. I got the Ting Nexus 5 SIM, and I received both of them. I put them together. I went to Ting's website and activated it. Ting has an awesome dashboard that lets you get everything you might want to get done with your account taken care of. They also have fantastic no-hold customer service, which you can call and get a real Canadian to answer the phone. But the dashboard, I think, is so great because not only is it just a really simple but yet powerful dashboard, it lets you set up a lot of like call forwarding, voicemail, activating, deactivating devices, all that kind of stuff. they pair it with a very active community forum. Like, here's one of my favorite forums that I visit pretty frequently on the Ting forums is the hacks thread. Yeah, Ting, a mobile carrier, actually has an officially blessed hacks section on their forum where you can go in there and see what people are doing with different devices. Maybe people have ran into issues on different Android releases, and here's some fixes in here. Good ideas for saving money on your wireless bill, all this kind of stuff. And don't forget about that rate. The way Ting does is they take your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes, they add them all up at the end of the month, whatever bucket you fall into, that's all you have to pay. You just pay for the data usage. If you want to use tethering, do it because it's built in with the plan. You just turn it on your phone and then just pay for the data usage. Of course, voicemail, caller ID, picture messaging, text messaging, all of that's included with the hotspot and tethering as well. And you've got the powerful Ting dashboard, and you can have multiple devices on one account, and they all share from a pooled set of minutes. It's $6 for one line. I'm paying $6 a month for my Nexus, and then it's just my usage on top of that. That totally changes up the whole value paradigm. That means like I can keep my HTC One for longer and longer because I continue to get the value out of it. It's not decreasing. It's actually getting more valuable for me. I can turn it and act as a hotspot. Like I went down to Fry's the other day, brought the HTC One. Boom. That was my hotspot. Ting makes it super simple. Go get started by going to techsnap.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. I love it. And I also love that not only is our host Canadian, but so is Ting. It's like, the Canadians are totally represented here on the TechSNAP program.
Yeah.
Okay, Alan, so I heard about this story where there's this, like 300,000 student records and faculty records got leaked, but I didn't really get the details. What's going on with this next one?
Yeah, the University of Maryland had their internal ID card system broken into. So it's 309,079 students, faculty, and staff at the University of Maryland's College Park and Shady Grove campuses had their personal information exposed in an attack against the ID card system. Apparently, the breach occurred at 4 a.m. on February 18th. The attacker was able to get access to the ID card database that holds information on all cardholders dating back to 1998. This includes the full name, social security number, birth date, and university ID number.
Wow.
One question is their data retention policy.
Yeah.
If I don't know if it's not very clear whether they purge data or not, but it seems like if you haven't been a student since 1998, that maybe they should have deleted your data.
Well, and it also makes me wonder, is it the same system that they had in operation since 1998? And is that one of the reasons it was compromised?
Possibly.
Is it super old?
So Brian Voss, who's the chief information officer for the University of Maryland, said that what concerns him is the sophistication of the attack. The hacker or hackers must have had very significant understanding of how the school's data are designed and protected. I'm not so sure about that. And I wonder if this is like some commercial system that they bought that a bunch of universities use, and so that it wouldn't be hard to get that kind of information. Or if it's something, Baroque that they wrote themselves, in which case I'm sure there's all kinds of holes in it, right?
Or if it is something they've had in production for years and years and years, maybe just enough people have had exposure to it. And I would probably bet it's the commercial package that dozens of other or hundreds of other institutions have in place, and so you learn how to operate it in one place. It's nook and crannies everywhere else you go too.
Right, and a lot of times it doesn't take that much to figure out how to break into a database.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, just
and
a little motivation.
Security is how complicated it is. That's not a sophisticated attack.
Well, look, we have a really screwed up system, so if somebody was able to compromise it, they must have really known what they were doing.
Yeah. Voss also claims that this was not a case of a door being left open. The attacker had to pick through multiple locks, which makes me really wonder some of the technical details.
Yeah.
Or if he even understands the technical details with how vague he was being. But it'll be interesting to see if some details do come out about this story, exactly how they got in there. But yeah, the bigger question is the data retention policy. Right? If you're not a student there, how long does the school keep your information, especially the more sensitive stuff like your social security number?
Well, and this is not going to be a problem that's going to go away. As storage gets cheaper and computing power gets greater, it becomes less costly to just keep stuff forever. I didn't get a chance to talk about it last night on Filter, but there is a proposal right now that the Wall Street Journal reported on yesterday that for the metadata collection on phone calls, they're now just considering keeping it indefinitely because it doesn't cost them that much. And it's not just schools; it's going to be hospitals, that are going to do this as well. It's going to be everywhere that stores records. I don't know, how do you have something, what do you have, almost like a customer's bill of rights that says your data will only be retained online for so long?
See, in Canada, we have something like that.
And it applies to
Personal Information and Electronic Documents Act, the PIDA.
And does it say you can only have, Alan Jude's records for 5 years?
Well, you're only allowed to use the data in relation to my relationship with the company, and that, it has to be secured and locked up, and nobody other than the people that actually, not just everybody in the company should have access to the data to lower the chance of, an internal theft.
That would be nice to have.
A bunch of things like that. Now, the enforcement, and, some of it's
how do they
the laws from, 1998, it doesn't always apply quite perfectly to computers and stuff, but it's a start.
Yeah, that would definitely seem like it'd be hard to enforce. I also think of it just from a data hygiene standpoint. Wouldn't you want to offline some of that just to sort of reduce what you have to back up when you're backing up your database, and for disaster recovery, speed and time? Wouldn't it just be better to have your database smaller? Wouldn't it be faster? It seems bad all around, and so it's bad from a security standpoint. It's bad from a data management standpoint. And it's bad from a policy standpoint, too. And I think something is, the IT people in our audience are watching, is maybe they should consider, if we have customer records, should we be pushing that conversation forward with management about how long we should be retaining those records? Because somebody's got to talk about it.
Well, and it came up recently. I was reading through some blogs at Delphix, or a company that builds appliances on top of ZFS. And I was learning about ZFS, but they also had this other post about the total cost of unmasked data. And they were talking, everybody was talking about the Target breach, but around the same time, there was a theft of 20 million subscribers' information in Japan or Korea. I forget which one it was now. But it turns out that they gave developers a copy of their database to work on, and that database contained all of their customers' credit card numbers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of data that shouldn't have gone into a development environment. It was South Korea. But it says, in 2012, South Korea passed a law requiring encryption of most companies' databases. But encrypting the database is one thing, but, when the database is online, it's not encrypted.
And if
just because a disk is encrypted, when you're accessing it, it still has to be unencrypted. And so when you take a backup of it, that's not encrypted, and then you encrypt the backup.
Yeah.
But when you give the data to someone, it's not encrypted, and if you give it to them and it's encrypted, you have to give them the key for them to decrypt it, otherwise it's no use to them.
Now, you've worked at the higher education area. I know at a high school, and at the school district I worked at, in general, in the high school area, when we'd have kids that were getting savvy enough, eventually they'd get higher level accounts. They would have access to more stuff because they were sort of like an extended teacher's assistant for the IT people. And it was sort of good for them because they were learning certain skills. So you have to think maybe in a university setting, there might be a higher exposure to people that have access to stuff that could want to do bad things.
Where I worked, they didn't have that, but they did have work placements where students could work,
But it was a job, essentially.
Yeah, a job. But they would provide them to students. And, they sometimes maybe they weren't as fastidious as they should have been about data security. Anyway, so in this, they talk about actually using masking tools, right? So that, as the data is getting backed up or whatever, maybe you're stripping out anything that's a credit card number.
Right, yeah.
Stuff like that. But a lot of companies will have something like this, but it'll end up being shelfware, right? Because of the complexity involved in doing it, or the manual labor involved in applying it before, dump the database, run it through the masker before you give it to the developer, and that step will just get skipped because it was manual. So, a lot of companies are paying for software to help mask this data so that it doesn't get leaked by accident, and then they just don't use it because it's too hard.
It'd be really cool. What's the logging called? I'm totally drawing a blank, but like Nagios charts or Cacti charts use it, where as it logs more, it sort of rolls off some of the finer detail.
Round robin database.
Yeah.
So that's for storing time series information. Right. Basically what it does is it stores the value of every minute of the bandwidth usage. Mm-hmm. And then once the data is a week old, it averages it to 5 minutes.
So it really only works for time.
A month old, it averages it to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it only works with values where you can average them.
Wouldn't it be awesome if there was a system that over time be like, okay, the 5-year threshold has been reached, so now we will zero out all the credit card information we have. Now, the 10-year threshold has been reached, so we'll zero out the address.
You can write a report that does that pretty freaking easily.
That's true.
That's a one SQL statement.
Yeah, that's true.
If last modified is greater than this or whatever, then do this.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Alan, any other thoughts on that one?
No, that's about it for that one.
All right, then why don't we say holler to the great folks over at ixsystems.com, another sponsor of the TechSNAP program. You can get started by going to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP and check out some of their awesome rigs powered by Intel Xeon processors, some of the best machines in the business. That's why Alan buys them, really.
Yep.
That's why I buy them, too. I am very proud to have IX Systems sponsoring 2 shows on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network because not only have I wanted them on the network for years because I've thought they'd be such a great fit for you guys, but I've also met a lot of them at cons and things like Linux Fest Northwest, and I've been really impressed. They have people who are involved with FreeBSD, with open source. They're working on the low-level stuff that you're building your stuff on top of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that, the guy who's making it so FreeBSD can handle 1 million IOPS off just a bunch of SSDs, he works at IX Systems.
Yeah.
The deputy security officer works at IX Systems. Most of the core guys that work on FreeNAS. IX runs FreeNAS. They're like, so this FreeNAS, it's good. Lots of people use it on our servers. And the developer guys doesn't have time for it anymore. And the other guy wants to take it over and base it on Debian. So we're going to step in and save the day.
Yeah, I'm just reading through, here's an example of Carlos, the network operations manager at Trend Micro. He says, IX Systems provides Trend Micro with outstanding server and storage solutions as well as exceptional service and support. There's no reason for our company to go anywhere else for our IT hardware needs. And I want to underscore what Carlos is saying right there is one of the things I noticed is when I started the process of buying my FreeNAS Mini, there was a back and forth dialogue that really was about addressing my data storage needs and then building the appropriate system and giving and taking on what was best. And then once I got the system, the white glove approach didn't just end; it continued. The relationship continues with IX Systems, and I know that there's a lot of great things I could say about IX Systems. But one of the things I think I want to just sort of impart on you is you can trust that when you order something from them, you're going to get it in, you're going to be able to put it in production. They've done extensive testing on this kind of stuff. They really know what they're working with. They understand not just the software layer of it, but they also deeply understand the hardware layer of it and how to make those two things work well together. They know how to test these things before they ship them to you, and they know how to get things working if there ever is a problem. So go over to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. They've also got over there a free white book you can download. It's the ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source. 11 key traits you must absolutely demand from your provider. It's probably definitely worth going through that. And read through the rest of their site, too. They got everything like Alan's saying, from the FreeNAS all the way up to the massive systems, which are just
and you
absolutely
can tell
hardcore.
from their customer list, right? They have a little our clients list. There's Walt Disney World, Firefox, Los Alamos National Labs, the NOAA,
U.S. Army, Hitachi,
Splunk, the weather people,
Symantec,
Splunk,
VMware,
ISC, the guys that the Internet Systems Consortium,
Autodesk,
Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman.
Oh, Shutterfly! I use them for stock stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah,
University of Florida, Berkeley, University of Michigan,
Michigan State, Rutgers, University of Utah, Virginia.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Craigslist,
Berkeley, University of California, University of Michigan, Florida.
Twitch, Evernote, Tumblr.
Yeah.
Hey, there's that Scale Engine company. I know them. Nielsen.
Even LinkedIn.
Wow. Gosh. Well, there's a good reason. And, I am... Congratulations to IX Systems. I mean, they are really blowing up these days for a really good reason. So go find out more about them and see why you can bank on IX Systems. Go to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. That lets them know you heard about it here on the show. And go check them out. See what we've been talking about.
And if you want to understand how that they're more than just a company, they're part of the community, check out their blog where they show them going to all the conferences and stuff. And you can just see them, interacting with people. And it's just a lot different than the presence you see by a lot of other companies at a conference like that.
Yeah, or go watch some of our Linux Fest Northwest coverage last year and see me wearing flashing BSD horns at a Linux Fest.
Yes. They're always the most popular thing from the IX table.
They're flashy.
If you're at a conference where IX is, make sure you go early to get your horns because they will run out.
They do.
Because everybody wants those.
They brought me my own pair, which was awesome. Like they set one aside for me, and I was like, "Thanks, guys." There you go. Nice horns, Alan. Okay, all right. So why don't we talk about this Zeus Trojan? I've heard the name. I know we've mentioned it, but I don't really have a good grasp on what's going on here.
Right. Well, so every time we've talked about it before, the Zeus Trojan was that man in the browser banking Trojan.
Yeah.
Right? It would get infected on your computer. When you would log into your online banking, it would change the web page, make your bank ask you your secret question even when the bank wasn't asking it.
The super clever one.
So it was, asking you for your secret questions so that it could answer them when it wanted to transfer money out of your account and the bank actually asked the secret questions.
Yeah.
Or once it stole the money from your account, it would modify your balance sheet page to make it look like you still had the money. So like even when there would be transactions after the day they stole the money, they would add the number back into the, delete the row where the money was taken.
Right, so when I check it looks good.
So yeah, even when you check after a bunch of other transactions, your balance is what you think it should be.
Right.
And you don't find out until you go to, say, an ATM and try to get money out, and it's like, you don't have any money.
Yeah, yeah. Just evil, Alan. It's just evil. So we've known all that, though. So is there a new wrinkle to this story?
This is a new way it's being used. It was brought to us by Adalum Labs. Some people that worked there watched the show, and they've, if you remember, we talked about them when we talked about the Office 365 Ice Dagger.
Yes.
Somebody managed to steal stuff from a company's Office 365 and not leave a trace.
Yeah.
So they've now discovered an unusual variant of the Zeus Trojan that's targeting Salesforce, which is an online customer relationship management system. A lot of companies use it to keep track of their sales leads and
it's huge.
Manage their customers. Yeah, it's a huge thing. It's like the basis of software as a service becoming a big thing.
Yeah.
They've been internally referring to the type of attack as land mining, since the attackers placed landmines on unmanaged devices used by employees to access company resources. So the attackers, now that they're able to bypass traditional security measures, wait for the users to connect to Salesforce and then exfiltrate data from the company's Salesforce account when that user actually logs in. Right? So as we've said, we talked about Zeus before, and one of the things about Zeus is the fact that it could even get around two-factor authentication because it's in your browser. It just waits until you authenticate and then goes to work.
Right.
And performing the actions on your behalf instead of making its own connection. Right? Instead of it logging in from Russia or whatever, it's doing it from your IP address, so it doesn't look suspicious that way either. Right? Because if your bank sees you log in over here and you log in across the country
they might
at the same time,
that.
They're going to be like, oh, right, that looks hinky.
Yeah. But if they see it all coming from the same IP they always see it coming from, it just looks like normal traffic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Google does the same thing.
Yeah, I know. I had that problem when I logged into Japan.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so this attack doesn't actually exploit a vulnerability at Salesforce, right? As far as I know, there's no problem at Salesforce.
Right.
This is just taking over the user's device so that once they log in, you can steal all the data from the company's Salesforce account. Also, this seems like a totally new kind of attack. When they went over to MITRE.org, which is one of the places that manages CVEs and stuff, they have this protocol called CAPEC, the Common Attack Pattern Enumeration and Classification.
Oh. Basically,
they assign numbers and names to every attack pattern so that when you're talking about two different attacks, you can classify them, right? So there's a classification system for saying what kind of attack this was. And it doesn't meet any of the existing patterns. So it's going to be added to the list as a new type of attack.
Okay. Fascinating.
So what happened was this company has a Salesforce, and they have a security system from Adalum installed. And what it detected was an employee accessing a large number of records in a short period of time, right? So they detected some employees looking at a lot of your customers' data all in rapid succession. And this triggers what's called an insider threat alert, right? The most common time this gets triggered is a sales agent downloading like their entire Rolodex, which oftentimes a sales rep will do before they quit and move to somewhere else.
Yes.
So that's why they have this thing set up.
Or a contractor.
Right? So it's like, when somebody's grabbing all the customer data, we are kind of suspicious they might be on their way somewhere else and trying to take all of our customers with them.
Let's notice that. That might be a good thing to notice.
Exactly. So it sets off an alert. And so the security guys for that company go over and like, hey, we noticed you're downloading a lot of customer data. What's up with that? And the employee was like, no, I wasn't. I was just doing my work. So Adalum did some more investigating and found that it was only happening on at nights and weekends. So, they checked the employee's laptop, and there was no viruses. It looked fine. But after more investigation, when they found out it was always on weekends, they're like, we should check your home computer. So they checked the guy's home computer and found it was running an unpatched version of Windows XP with an unpatched version of Internet Explorer and a virus scanner where the subscription had expired.
Oh, worst case scenario.
So it's just like typical user and it's like they found spyware, malware, and just ads everywhere. It's just this horrible... you feel like you should be wearing double latex gloves to touch it.
Yeah, you're going to get something just looking at it.
Yeah. But one of the things they found was that it was infected with a modified version of the Zeus Trojan called Win32/Zbot. And the interesting part was that this Trojan, instead of targeting banks, right, every time before it's been set up to target a bank, this one targets star.my.salesforce.com. And it was saving all the data as it was viewed and as it was dumping it to a temporary place on the hard drive, and then it would exfiltrate it back to the attacker. And so they would get all the customer records for these companies.
Oh, my gosh. And, as Craig points out in our chat room, that XP setup is probably pretty dang common, too. So this is the kind of thing that could happen to a company with really without much stretch of the imagination.
And it wouldn't have to be just Salesforce, right? If they were just VPNing and accessing regular software like SAP, or whatever your customer database is stored in.
Yeah.
So the attack leveraged devices not controlled by corporate security, right? So this company obviously had pretty good security, right? They were paying for this Adalum service to monitor their Salesforce and all this other stuff. So they have virus scanners and they take care of keeping all the corporate machines up to date, but they allow employees to use their home machines to access the data, and therein was the problem. Right?
Yeah.
So this kind of highlights the risk involved with bring your own device type things and allowing employees to use their home computers to access corporate information, especially when it's a SaaS application.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing this company very shortly is going to have a new policy of you can only use your work laptop to access this stuff at home. No using your home computer.
This is an interesting case, too, where the argument could be, if they were using something like Citrix Remote Zen Desktop or whatever it's called now, or Microsoft's remote terminal services, where they could work from their home computer, but they would be using a remote session.
In a secure environment.
Yeah.
Something like that might have been.
But allowing that XP machine to be the interface point with the application, even if it's, supposedly through a VPN or something like that, it doesn't help you.
This wouldn't be VPN because it's SaaS, right? The whole point is that their customer data is in the cloud, and you can access it from anywhere, which has a lot of advantages, but it has a disadvantage. And so what they said is, a lot of times when we were talking about security of data in the cloud, we've always been blaming the SaaS vendor, right? The Dropbox or whatever for all the problems. But sometimes, there's three different people that have responsibility in this case. You have the SaaS vendor, Salesforce, the company, and then the user. And in this case, it was very obvious that it was the user that was at fault in this case. And the user is always going to be the weakest link.
Well, and I think, too, it's interesting the parallels here between monitoring something for just a typical abuse case, like you're saying the salesperson decides to leave and pull the Rolodex, and how that same type of behavior is also exactly what an attacker would do. So it's like a win-win by monitoring that.
And also the importance of following up on that, right? You see the alert, you don't just assume somebody was downloading the Rolodex. You go and find out, was that you? Were you doing this?
Yeah. Did you really mean to do that? Do you know you just downloaded 2 gigabytes worth of a database? Very good point. All right, Al, any other thoughts on that story?
No.
One of the cool things is one of the guys who worked on that is in our chat room right now. So yeah, we'll I think we have an email from him coming up.
Yes, we got an email segment.
All right, well, then I will take just a moment to thank GoDaddy.com, our final sponsor for this week's episode of the TechSNAP program. And just for a few more days, you can take advantage of that $2.95 promo code, 295TECH. 295TECH, all one word, when you check out over at GoDaddy.com. In fact, you can click the banner in our show notes. That'll preload your shopping session, so you don't even have to worry about the code. But again, it's 295TECH when you check out. At $2.95.com, there's no reason not to get one. And GoDaddy is really making sure that if you are in a business, a small team, they're getting really organized. And their goal now is really to make that work a lot better. And this is always something I felt like they've been really strong at. So see them double down on this is really an awesome move on their part. So go over to GoDaddy.com and check out why they really are still the world's #1 domain name registrar by a huge margin. They're the gold standard in the industry. And if you're working with a team, if you're working with clients, if you're working at your job, there's a reason why you want to stick with them. 55 million domains under management, more than 12 million customers, 24/7, 365 round-the-clock customer care, more than 4,000 employees, and of course, like I said, the #1 domain name registrar in the whole dang world. And there's a reason for it, people. And let me tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I've walked into a place that hasn't had GoDaddy when I was a contractor, and I knew I was in for a bad time. And every time you go in, it's GoDaddy. It's going to get taken care of.
The ones I've always felt worse for are the places that let the guys that design their website own the domain.
Yes. Happens all the time. Because they go to a guy and they're like, hey, we want a website. And of course, the client doesn't know anything how to get that set up. So the web guy builds this, and sometimes in that web guy charges them some sort of insane monthly run cost for the web server that he puts on his own box, maybe has 10 other people's website on. And I've seen so many people get manipulated by that. And really,
no, the worst one is I think yellowpages.com or something.
Oh my gosh.
They would give you this really basic website, but they would own the domain. So you couldn't make your own website after. You would have to get a different domain. They're like, sorry, no, it'll be a lot of money if you want your domain back.
Yeah.
It's like, you evil.
So I say go over to GoDaddy.com, use the promo code 295TECH while you can, because that's a great deal. Get one to forward to some long URL, or get one to point to a blog or a project, a website, whatever you've been working on. Go get your piece of the internet real estate.
One. I saw the girl that does all the graphics design for BSD Now.
Yeah.
It was her birthday, and so her husband bought happybirthdayjenny.com.
Oh, that's nice.
And put up a little message and pictures of their kid and stuff.
Well, 295 Tech, why not? Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's for events, that's a really great idea, and keeps everybody on the same page. And one of the things I should think about is we have a Linux Fest Northwest after party we're organizing, but I can't just give out a URL on air because it's a Google Plus event, and it's like this 15-page long URL.
Yeah. So just get
I should get
JBLFNWW
something,
some ridiculous URL.
Yeah, and I will. That's a great idea, and GoDaddy makes it super easy just to forward
or
that.
just buy linuxafterparty.com.
Yeah. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Is that available right now? Let me just see real quick.
I'm sure that wouldn't be taken yet. And it'll be reusable every year.
You're right. It is available. I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
Good thinking, Alan. Good thinking. All right. See, so now I'm going to... I'll
better hurry up and do that, because now that we set it on air, somebody else is going to jump on.
I just put it in my cart. I just did it. So I'm going to... So I'll get that taken care of during the break. So, Alan, is there anything else we want to cover before we jump into the feedback?
Nope. It's time to go.
All right, one quick mention. I want to say thank you to everybody who grabbed a Linux Action Show 300 shirt. We've reached 795 towards our goal of 754. So now the shirts are unlocked. They'll be shipping. And everybody's going to... Oh, I should have brought the challenge coin. So we'll have this running for a little bit longer. We might shut it down early if we start getting too many orders, because we have to pay for every coin. Yeah. So go to teespring.com/last300 while this is still going for a little bit longer. I just wanted to put the word out there, because it might be shut down by the time the next TechSNAP is on the air next week. We'll see. I don't know. All right, Alan. Well, with the news all done, that does mean it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com, or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. And Alan, I'd said we were going to be covering an email from Avid, who worked on that story we just covered previously. Well, here it is. He's helping me jog my memory. He says, "Hi, Chris. The SSH key management thing that uses DNS that I was trying to remember the other day, it is called SSH Shark. It uses the SSH command to issue a DNS query to ascertain if the key is used and to connect if it's still valid. Hope this helps." Thank you. It does help. I knew it was out there. I just couldn't remember what it was called. And then you remember, too, when you saw that email, right?
Yes. And he says his name is pronounced Aviad. I remember he explained it last time he wrote into the show. And he must have forgot this time.
Aviad.
Remember.
Aviad. All right. Okay.
But no, see, there's a stop. It's
Aviad.
Now you over-exaggerated the stop.
I'm trying. Okay.
I'm just screwing with you.
All right, let's see how I do with Robert. Okay, I think I can do Robert, but this is my problem. I continue to work on it.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of emails on this whole what did they call them? I can't remember now. Like the smart modems that are being installed in Australia. We got a few different takes on that, and I couldn't run them all. But Robert, I thought was a good one. He says, "Hi, listening to my regular TechSNAP podcast as always, and you had Andrew write in with a question about fiber internet for a new estate in Perth. I used to work for a company making the FTTP, the fiber to the premise, for Telstra, the big telco in Australia, and I can give you a little basic rundown on how this works. This is the same tech that is being used by the national broadband network that the Australian government has been rolling out over the last couple of years. The fiber comes from either the exchange or a node in the street, and then each fiber is split to 2 stages into 32 fibers, and each of these fibers goes to a house. Each of the 32 houses has a time slot on this effectively shared medium. Each house will have 1 gigabit IP connection through this time slot. The phone is VoIP, and that's split from your internet traffic on a separate VLAN. The cable TV was originally not IP, but I would imagine that will change in the future if it hasn't already. All your internet traffic will be transported on a separate VLAN to your ISP, who will then send it off to the internet. The pipe to your ISP is a point-to-point protocol over Ethernet, the PPOE protocol. He said, I read through the following sites, and it looks as though they provide you one Ethernet drop and are pushing for users to get their own router or buy one from them. He says, I hope this clarifies, and he also includes a link to the National Broadband Network and the FTTP information, and as well as how the ISPs are selling it. So thank you very much, Robert, for writing that in, especially since you've had some experience in that area. And hopefully that helps
the inside stuff, but it makes it a lot easier. Yeah,
we got a lot of great responses, and some really long ones. So thank you to everybody who took the time to try to write that into us and help us understand. That was exactly what we needed. So Ben Morse writes in. He says, hey, Alan and Chris, I'm writing to clear up a question that Alan asked on Twitter and to get some advice. I'm building a distributed sensor network using multiple BeagleBone Blacks, which will be distributed in the field. Each BBB is connected to the internet through a 2G wireless modem using UART, PPP, and A+ commands. He says, I can't believe I'm still using A+ commands. Some BeagleBone Blacks will be vehicle mounted, so connection quality will suck most of the time, and each BBB is on the same open VPN so that I can SSH if I really need to. I'm using Chef to manage and configure them, also deploy my custom C++ application for measuring the sensors and uploading the data to my DigitalOcean server. Wow, Ben, that's crazy. Here's a list of questions. Feel free to only answer the ones you want. I know 2G is really crappy, but I don't know exactly how crappy. How can I measure the type of loss I'm experiencing over the link?
There's a couple different things. iPerf kind of gives you just transfer stats, and if you do it in UDP mode, it'll give you loss stats. And you can, if you do -I1, it'll give you per 1 second instead of normally it just gives you a summary at the end. There's also another app, I can't remember the name. I think it's TCP Replay, which allows you to take a capture from like Wireshark or TCP dump and then analyze it after the fact and, look at packet loss and how many, like if you're using TCP, how many retransmits there were.
Right.
And it can be very useful for debugging why something went sideways.
Yeah, and in a pinch too, like just running TCP dump or Wireshark would probably give you a pretty quick indication if something's having to retransmit a lot, if there's been a lot of errors.
If you're using Wireshark, the advantage you get is that retransmits show up in like bright red or something. And obviously you're not going to run that on the BeagleBone, but what you can do is run TCP dump there, write it to a file, and then open that file for analysis in Wireshark. They have instructions on that on the Wireshark website.
That's a super nice and very slick way to do it. It works well.
Yeah, because you can just drill into it with the GUI a little better than you can by hand.
Yeah, and you can...
It's like, I can grok most of the packet in the hex, but sometimes it's just easier with the GUI.
Okay, so his next question, he says, I control both ends of the application. I'm assuming that UDP is best to send to a sensor and to get data back, but I'm not sure. TCP seems like it might get stuck in a retransmission loop too easily. Right now, I'm sending data back outside of the VPN. Any thoughts on?
The problem with sending your sensor data over UDP is it might not get there.
Yeah.
The advantage, obviously, to doing something like TCP is that you have a better chance of it getting there. But, it depends. Is missing one sensor reading every once in a while a big deal or not?
Yeah, that's the question. And if it's not, then UDP is probably the right way to go.
Because what TCP will do is try transmitting, and if it fails too many times, then it'll abort the TCP connection. The big advantage there is your app on the BeagleBone will know that the other side never received that data, and it can attempt to reconnect or buffer up that data until the connection is accepting data again.
Yeah. Otherwise, the app will just assume with UDP it made it.
Yeah, it just assumes it made it, and so you might end up not getting reports from the data.
I'm not so sure on this next one. It seems like it might be too application specific, but he says, I have issues where I can't get, say, like a 500 kilobyte package to install because the download fails. And then when I go to install it again, it has to start over from 0%. Is there a way to make apt and other programs resume their downloads?
I don't know. On FreeBSD, the port tree doesn't resume by default either.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a way to do it with apt.
Well, see,
what if you used a different program to download the package and then use
with FreeBSD? There's a command fetch, or it's fetch recursive list or something like that. Man ports, and it'll explain, and it prints out the script that will download all the files you need, and then you could easily just replace the command, add the extra flag to fetch to make it retry and resume.
Yep.
Or replace it with something like ARIA2 or which will try multiple mirrors.
Oh, you know what? There is a way to do that with apt, to swap out the downloader to ARIA and have it resume. I have seen guides on that. That might be one way to do it. The other way I was thinking is download the packages with a program that supports resuming and then just install them locally.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Replace the fetch command with wget-c or whatever to make it continue.
Yeah. All right, so he says, I found that tuning my MTU to a very small number, like less than 200, seems to make the link more reliable. What other tunables should I look at for reliability?
Well, the problem with there is that, you're getting into a lot of overhead there if you're trying to send a large packet because you're sending a header every time because if your MTU is 200 bytes, I think you lose at least the first 32 bytes or more just on, the IP header and the TCP header and so on. A little bit less with UDP, but still. There's a minimum packet size, and so you're sending that many more packets, which means there's that much more chance for loss. Although, as you're seeing, sometimes shorter packets are more reliable. Mm-hmm. So the way this whole conversation started was he was just mentioning on Twitter that he was finding that short packets were more reliable or less latent than the longer ones. And I said, well, by default, you'll have something enabled called Nagel's algorithm. Which was designed back when Telnet was a thing, and it would send the keys as you type them. But on a really high latency connection, that's sending a lot of packets for no reason. Mm-hmm. So it would say, buffer up, and only once the first block has been waiting for 200 milliseconds, actually send it. So that way, when you're typing, you get a whole bunch of characters in one packet instead of each character going into a separate packet, just by waiting a tiny bit. It would be almost imperceptible to the user, especially with, if you're talking like 100 millisecond round trip time, then that way you would get fewer packets and less wasted overhead. Mm-hmm. If you're worried about, if you need the response time, sometimes disabling that will actually help.
So he's kind of...
I guess what that would do for him in this case is any small packets would stay small packets and big ones would stay big ones. Whereas if it forces a small MTU, mm-hmm. even the big packets are going to get broken up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that will, kill your download speed on those large package things that you're trying to download mm-hmm. From apt, because, you're increasing the overhead by a significant percentage.
Now, he's got a question about TCP congestion. He says, the only TCP congestion control options I have on Ubuntu is something called Cubic Rhino, or Rhino. But Rhino. Does BSD offer something here that might be more useful?
I think even most Linuxes offer a whole slew of them now. But yeah, BSD has like 6 to choose from. Different ones based on loss-based or latency-based. So that generally... the congestion control considers, like Reno, or new Reno by default, would consider a loss to be an indication of congestion. And if you're on a shoddy wireless link, then maybe loss isn't an indication that there's actually congestion. It's just that you lost a packet. Mm-hmm. So then you're looking at doing something like HTCP, which is one of the other congestion control algorithms, where only when sending a packet takes a lot longer than usual to indicate congestion.
His final question, and I don't... okay, I'm just reading through it right now. He says, the devices may be stolen. Okay. So I would like the OpenVPN configuration where only I can SSH into the BeagleBone Black, but there is no client-to-client talk. How can I have it so that my office computer joins the VPN and does have client-to-client talk, but no other nodes do?
So I'm not clear whether he's asking, he wants the clients to be able to talk to each other, but only through his computer, or never to be able to talk to each other, but his computer be able to talk to all of them.
Yeah. So he wants, yeah.
So either way, there's a setting in OpenVPN, whether you want the clients to be able to see each other or not. And one of them is like bridged and one of them is routed. And in routed mode, the clients each think they're a different like /31 network or whatever. And it allows you to just, you can have a PF firewall or whatever decide if a packet's allowed between two of the nodes. And you can just deny that or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
I think by default, if each one's a tap interface, and they wouldn't be able to see each other unless you enable routing.
Good email, Ben. He's got a question here about CUDA, too. Do you have anything about CUDA on BSD?
I don't know about CUDA on BSD.
So Liam writes in. He says, please cover this story. The various new NSA GCHQ slides have been released, and they show that agents from these agencies infiltrate websites intending to manipulate, deceive, and destroy reputations. Now, I thought this was interesting. I have read through this. Glenn Greenwald has a really good piece up on firstlook.org, I think is what the URL is. But what I thought was interesting is to think about this in the context of encryption standards debates and, in open forums where people are debating the future direction of security implementations, and to see that there are actual active programs. It's not even really a conspiracy where they outline it all. Telling, and I think it's just a cautionary tale in a sense. We covered it more last night on Unfiltered, the specifics of we have a few slides in the show notes if you guys want to go check it out. But yeah, it's a crazy story. It's definitely worth reading up about it. It's nuts, really, in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, we've talked about a little bit about that with the standards. Like when we're talking about the standards for the new SSL or whatever, somebody will pop up with something like
derail the conversation.
Yeah, well, they'd be like, "Oh, well, we could do this," and then people are arguing about that for a week instead of actually moving forward, and they keep doing that.
Yep.
Or posting stuff that all the security experts have to take a bunch of time to review, and that
slowing things down and
doing everything they can to prevent anybody from making a decision or actually making things happen.
Yeah. Okay. Next email comes from Ruben, and he's got a question about a Webmin alternative. He says, "Hello, Chris and Alan. Thank you for the show. It makes it a lot easier not to pay for cable. Just wondering if you guys knew of any alternatives to Webmin. I use it to tinker with my soon-to-be website files on my Ubuntu server. However, since Firefox blocked the Java application, I'm no longer able to manage the files through Webmin. Sorry if this is the wrong place to ask, but appreciate your time on the show. Best of luck on the new studio." He also says, "Let me know if FreeBSD has a better way to manage files on a web server. I plan to start playing with FreeBSD soon. I'm technically challenged and play around with tech because it feels like it puts my mind to work." So, have you used Webmin? I know that's not specifically a Linux tool.
No, it's definitely been available for FreeBSD since like.
Are you a fan?
1999.
Are you a fan of Webmin?
No. Part of that is I took a Perl programming class in college, and our task was to write a Webmin module.
Oh, interesting.
That modified managed your bash profile and took care of automatically tabbing the shell script and stuff. It was fun.
There's probably, by the way, like Craig's pointing out in the chat room, there's probably a way you could add an exception so that Java applet isn't blocked. I mean, because I can't imagine they would just block all Java applets. If that's really all the problems.
It's actually not a Firefox. Well, sorry. Firefox blocks a Java applet from starting if your version of Java is out of date. Separately, in your control panel under Java, there's something that blocks any non-signed applets. And you can turn your security settings in Java down to allow that, although maybe you don't want to do that. Now, so he's using the file browser thing in Webmin that's built in Java. You might consider just using an SFTP client, like WinSCP or FileZilla. I recommend FileZilla out of the two, because WinSCP has an interface that's blocking sometimes. It's really annoying. Anyway, with FileZilla, you get this view where your computers have to screen and the other computers have to screen, and you can browse around and drag files back and forth and rename stuff, and it's all the stuff you'd expect to do. And it makes it easy to transfer files back and forth as well.
That would definitely be my recommendation, too. There is another option that I have played with. It's called, I don't really even know if I want to recommend it. It's called eExplore. or Explore It or something like that. EXT Explorer, I'm not quite sure. It's a PHP JavaScript-based file manager. You get a user account login system to it. Then you log in, and it essentially allows you to browse the directory that you've pointed it at. So you could make it your web directory. And it doesn't require any Java. It's just JavaScript. It doesn't require any plugins, so it works with pretty much any browser. And it has a bunch of different backend authentication options. I've customized it for a few clients. And you just have to have PHP on your web server. But like Alan says, I would much rather say just use SFTP. Yep. It's not only sort of an industry standard, but if you get
it also can use, if you're on Windows and you're using it, you can have it use your SSH keys. Like I have the PuTTY authentication agent, and it uses those keys automatically, which is really nice. Yep.
And like if you moved it to a different web host down the road, that web host is almost always going to have you interface with files over SFTP. So
it's SFTP is the typical way to do everything.
Yeah. Webmin, you're teaching yourself how to do it through Webmin, and that is useful like if you just really want to turn something on. But if you want to be able to apply that to another server down the road, SFTP is totally the way to go.
Webmin's more actually designed for managing the configuration of Apache and so on. The file browser is kind of an afterthought.
And I'm not a big fan of having Webmin remotely accessible to a machine that's on the internet. LAN accessibility is one thing.
It's less of an issue now, but because it's been through it already. But 10 or more years ago, Webmin was the target of excessive scrutiny to try to find ways to break into it because everybody had it on their server.
Yeah, and it's a great target.
Now it's less popular, and it's basically lived through being pounded on so much.
Right. Maybe at least lock it down by IP. That might be like if you're always coming from a certain IP. It might be a way to do it. All right, Kerry writes in, and he says, hey, Alan, I know this isn't a technical question, but I was so shocked to hear from my favorite author when I heard my favorite author for years mentioned on the show. I just wanted you to know that what you thought of the book. Always a great show. Thanks to you and Chris, I've been compelled to go back to school and finally get a job in the tech industry like I've always wanted. So Flight of the Intruder.
Yes, which I had seen the movie. And so when I was looking through Audible to spend my credit for the month to pick a book, that's the one I ended up picking on.
Yeah.
It's kind of right up my alley. It's, mostly about flying A6 intruders off of an aircraft carrier.
Oh, okay. All right, putting that on the wish list.
Yeah, very detailed technical stuff about, flying and landing and taking off and landing on an aircraft carrier. Which
I love
is just
that stuff.
kind of something I've always been interested in.
Yeah.
And apparently, I didn't know until after I finished the book, but it's actually part of like a series of books based on the main character, Jake Grafton. So I'm actually on the second book now.
Well, the first book is 11 hours and 32 minutes. These audiobooks are awesome. And we're using... What?
I'm pretty sure mine was 18 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This one's unabridged. Yeah. This must maybe your new one's 18 hours. Book one.
Maybe.
And we'll have the affiliate version of the link in the show notes. So if you grab this and you're not an Audible member yet, you can get this book for free, and we get like a kickback. If you're already an Audible member and you buy it, we still get a kickback, but whatever. And then so Flight of the Intruder. Now I wanted
and one of the interesting things with that one is I think the first audiobook I've ever read where it uses a full cast instead of one narrator.
Oh, isn't that
each character
epic?
Has a different person doing the voice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see that narrated by full cast. I love that when they do that.
Yes. Yeah. It definitely makes having the female characters in the book a little more interesting when it's not just some guy trying to do a girly voice.
Yeah. Well, so that brings me to my next book. So my book that I just picked up because I saw an interview on Triangulation with the author is Influx by Daniel Suarez. And the guy who does the reading, Jeff Gerner, was part of the interview. And this is a way this guy does it right. He does that when you have to do the opposite sex. I want to play a little sample because people are loving this book. It almost has a 4.4 star rating right now on Audible.
Nice.
The investment predates me, but these guys claim they've made some big breakthrough. I'll be damned if I can understand a thing they're saying. Johnson edged in. We need you to evaluate their scientific claims. Tell us if they're on the level. Kulkarni nodded. Is there a business plan or lab report I can review? Both men exchanged looks. Morano answered. We can't part with printed material at this point, Professor. You'll have to review this firsthand. Then I'll need to speak with the founders, tour the facility. Kulkarni eyed the darkened building. Oh, they're in there.
This late?
Yeah, blowing through $30,000.
In the interview, I watched this guy read this live. It's amazing how he just switches through the characters and the voice and like that. And he does it just in real time.
Made the Tom Clancy novels work for me. There's just one, I think it was Michael Pritchard, and he does the Russian accent so well, and he can do like 4 different Russian accents. So it really separate. You know, when it's 2 Russian guys talking, being able to have the 2 different, it makes it easier to understand who's talking when. And but the interesting one about the for the Flight of the Intruder with the full cast was just, you know, when you had like the Master Chief or the bosun's mate or whatever talking, you know, he just sounds like, you know, the big fat bosun's mate guy you expect, right?
Yeah.
For the different jobs.
Yeah, that's because they can get people that are more appropriate for that role.
Yeah,
that's
or
really
can just do the appropriate voice.
Yeah. So the influx is kind of about it's really about the centralization of technical innovation, and it's kind of it's sort of taking a mirror to current events where you have massive, you know, consolidation of technical intelligence and capability and innovation, and this is sort of taking a little bit darker where a massive technological breakthrough has been uncovered, and then certain forces work to kind of keep it oppressed, keep it away from the market, and it's really fascinating what happens. And people are saying this is his best book he's ever written. So it's Influx by Daniel Suarez, and Alan's book, which also was written in by our audience, a member who loves it, was Flight of the Intruder. We'll have both those linked in the feedback section. Yeah. And I think they both support Whisper.
It helps that he was actually an A6 pilot in Vietnam, and that's why the perspective he's writing the book from.
I'm not sure if the Suarez one supports Whisper Sync, but the Flight of the Intruder does support Whisper Sync. Which is awesome.
Which is a really cool feature I have on my Kindle. And it means I can listen to part, and if I pause it and come back later, I can pull up the ebook version, and it'll be synced right to the page where I was, and I can read more. And then when I go back to the audio version, it jumps ahead to where I had read to.
Yeah, and they have a really good Audible app for Android and iOS, so I can sync between my Android device and my iPad, which is really cool.
Yes, which I do a lot. And it makes the Android one is so good, it makes me miss it when I'm using it on my Kindle. My Kindle doesn't have the sleep feature to automatically turn off after so many minutes.
Yeah.
And I use that so much on the Android.
And you get badges and stuff. It's just kind of funny. Yeah. You get like listening badges, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm doing good. Oh, they know how to get me. All right, Alan. Well, so we'll have links to that stuff in the email, if in the feedback section. We'd like to get your emails. So if you sent in something and didn't make it in the show, it might have been we just didn't have time, or it might have been too long, or it might have just gotten missed.
When you send it, like 90 minutes or like 30 minutes before the show, we're already done. We've already put it all together. So if you didn't get your question in, or if you've got a question you want to send in, could be security related, system administration related, storage related, networking related, whatever it is, email us techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or even better, go to Jupiter Broadcasting, click the contact link, choose TechSNAP from the drop down. That makes sure it gets sent. We have robots that are just in standby mode. As soon as an email comes in from there, they send it off to the right direction. So that's great. Or the subreddit links.techsnap.tv. But Alan, with the feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup were stories that just didn't quite fit at the top of the show. Sometimes these links come from our subreddit. A lot of times they come from Alan. And this week, our first story starts with Apple again. So this one, people are kind of taking issue with Apple's overall response to the security situation that happened recently. We just talked about the top of the show. And now it looks like some people are concerned that perhaps Apple has dropped support for a slightly older version of OS X that still 1 and 5 Macs actually run. So right now, Apple has issued an update for Mavericks and Mountain Lion and Lion. Snow Leopard users, which I think I actually have a Snow Leopard machine somewhere here in the studio, I'm not sure where, have not seen a security update since September of 2013. So it would appear to be that Apple has discontinued updating. The problem here, now specifically, that vulnerability doesn't necessarily exist in the older in Snow Leopard. But that vulnerability was only only added in 10.9.
Yeah,
like 10.8 didn't need a fix.
But the greater problem here is sort of Apple's lack of transparency on how what the support lifetime is of their operating systems. And
because like Microsoft publishes a
Very
big,
clear,
complicated policy.
Yeah.
And, even
well, clear.
the FreeBSD project.
But
the FreeBSD project is like we have a graph and it explains this is how long it's supported and here's the general policy, so that you can predict when the next version that hasn't even come out yet, how long that will be supported for.
Yeah, and this is even more critical in the enterprise space because IT departments need to know how long they can have an operating system deployed in production. And the problem is if there's no official word from Apple how long something's going to be supported, and there's no official word when it stops being supported, that really just kind of leaves you in a gray area.
You want to know a year ahead of time when an OS is going to hit its end of life because you need time to test the upgrade and make sure it's all going to work and then roll it out.
Yeah.
And that could take a long time.
Exactly. All right, so our next story kind of comes from that creepy category, right, Alan?
Yes. So the GCHQ, which is the British version of the NSA, it turns out they were hijacking webcam chats with Yahoo Chat and storing the images of everyone they could intercept.
Wow.
So they said, rather than targeting specific people, we'll just take a picture of every webcam every 5 minutes. In the course of 6 months, they captured over 1.8 million users' images.
Jeez.
And the program actually ran for more than 2 years, between 2008 and 2010.
What a violation of privacy.
Apparently, they were using it to test their face recognition software.
To build the database up?
Or something. But one of the interesting things that comes out of it is they say that they have, The Guardian has copies of some of the ancillary stuff about it. And, the GCHQ had to update their policy about offensive images or offensive content.
Oh, my gosh.
Because of the amount of sexually explicit images they captured from people's webcams.
It would appear that a surprising number of people use webcam conversations to show intimate parts of their body to other people. It says in the statement.
Apparently, they're new to the internet.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking. Like, they're going to collect not only a bunch of, really private moments, but probably stuff that's illegal for them to have pictures of because of child pornography laws.
Possibly, although hopefully there's not too many little kids.
Not little kids, but I bet high school kids. I mean, come on. I think that's happening, Alan.
Oh, I don't know what the age for that is in the UK.
That's true.
It's the UK. They're probably more nanny state than anybody.
Or maybe, the nudity is really a big deal here in America. So maybe other places it's not such a big deal. But here, if you're under 18 and you have a picture of somebody, that's a no-no.
Right.
This is so funny. I love that it would appear that a surprising number of people use webcam conversations to show intimate parts of their body.
Well, yeah, Yahoo Chat. That's what it's for.
Let's see. It says
we built this group conversation thing for Scale Engine.
Alan, I love this part. It also appears, because Yahoo software allows more than one person to view a webcam stream without necessarily sending the reciprocal stream, it means that a number of people use it to broadcast pornography. Well, come on, guys.
So that great phase into the story. At Scale, we built this group meeting software.
Yeah.
It was like even before Skype offered multi-way video.
Okay.
It was a server-based multi-way video. It was like TeamSpeak or Mumble, but with video. And it never really took off, so we left the demo online. And then one day you walk in and there's a bunch of people doing things, and it's like, oh my!
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's apps that let you
monitor,
feed your webcam from something else.
Oh,
so they'll play a video as if it was the webcam, right? And so Flash picks it up and displays this
shows
video.
it as a camera source. Yeah,
yeah. So there's just regular DVD pornography playing on one person's screen, and then there's other people on their other webcams doing their thing, and yeah.
I agree, though. Welcome to the internet, GCHQ. Like, how did you not see that coming? Wow, what a hell of a creepy story, though.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it didn't leak sooner, just because I'm sure somebody was offended by having to see some of that.
Yeah.
It's like, apparently they tried to censor some of the images, like to detect when an image contained something offensive.
What a waste of money.
But yeah.
I put this in the roundup because I'm really excited about the future parents out there that will be able to just print toys for their children. MakerBot starts taking pre-orders for the itty-bitty 3D printer. It was shown at CES 2014. This is a really slick looking. I mean, I would be happy to have this on my desk. It looks really good, and it's starting at $1,300 before shipping. It's not going to be the cheapest one they offer, but it's a good size, it's a good price, it's very awesome looking.
You know what I'd pay for? An even smaller one that just printed Lego pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
there'd be a patent problem with it, and I can understand why it doesn't. But, a kid with an infinite number of Lego pieces of whatever size and shape. It's like, you know how they had those corner pieces that were 3? What if you could have a longer corner piece so you get more stability out of it?
Yeah.
And just, bunch of things like that. Or sometimes you just needed an impossible Lego piece, like one that was a female on both sides.
Yeah.
Just print it.
I could see this too. Like I could print like custom hard drive caddies, like all kinds of stuff you could use this for.
Yep.
I'm really excited about this kind of stuff. And this is gonna so many problems are gonna be caused by the capabilities of 3D printing down the road. But here we are at its infancy, and it's fun to see it actually getting to look kind of polished. Like this is looking like a real consumer product now. Just needs to come down a few $100.
They sell the $1,500 one. I don't think it's as nice as that Maker one.
Yeah.
But they sell one like that at Staples.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
It's like, it's coming.
It's going mainstream when it's at Staples.
Yeah, it's going mainstream when you can do that.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about this Netflix fraud alert, because I think you kind of came across this sort of serendipitous.
Yeah, I came across this separately.
Yeah.
I was looking to buy a Netflix subscription as a birthday gift for somebody, my sister. And I went to their website and it wasn't there anymore. I was like, her? So I popped up the chat support thing, and this was last week, and I was like,
hey, where's the gift cards?
I'm trying to buy this. How did it? It's like, oh, right, that's down for maintenance. It should be back shortly. I'm like, so, will it be back? It was, I think, Friday, and I was like, so will it be back if I come back on Monday? And they're like, yeah, it should be. I'm like, okay. Well, I come back today, and they're like, yeah, we don't know when it'll be back. There was a bunch of fraud from Brazil, and we've had to take it offline until we can figure it all out.
Oh.
So apparently, some fraudsters in Brazil got a hold of a bunch of credit cards, possibly from the Target scam or something else, and they were just buying massive numbers of Netflix gift cards with them. Partly, I think, just to test whether the credit cards were actually good or not, but also because, you can sell Netflix gift cards for less than they're normally worth on, gift card trading sites or eBay or whatever.
Sure. All right, our next story comes...
And anyway, there's the Reddit conversation about it. Talking about a bunch of people whose credit cards got hit with this.
Yeah.
And they're posting some of their information to try to, if enough people did it, they would be able to figure out possibly where the credit card information got the attacker from.
Yeah.
Because one of the guys says, the credit card's only 2 months old. It was replaced after the Target thing.
Oh, wow.
And then, but from my read, everybody that got affected was a customer of Chase. So
could be something with Chase Bank.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's going on. But some of the people didn't have a Netflix subscription, and so it's not like it was coming from Netflix. But I think the other kind of clever thing there is if you're buying a 1-month subscription card from Netflix, which costs, I think, 50 cents less than the normal monthly fee for a Netflix or something, a Netflix charge showing up with somebody's credit card, if most people have a Netflix account, they're not going to notice. Like in a family like yours, you have a couple of credit cards. Like Angela has one, you have one, or whatever. And you might not notice that Netflix showed up on both of the credit cards.
Yeah, not initially. Yeah.
You see Netflix and be like, oh, yes, we have Netflix. That's what that's there for.
Oh, I guess we put it on that card.
Actually, yeah. I thought our Netflix was on this card.
Yeah.
It is. So how are we getting charged twice? We never gave that card to Netflix. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Right? But because Netflix is so ubiquitous now, it kind of means that it's a good choice for fraudsters to have what shows up on the statement say Netflix.
Yeah. Big time, really. I mean, Netflix is becoming the cable of the internet.
Well, yeah, it's getting to the point where most households have it. Yeah. And that means that
where it's at least where it's not blocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got an email about that last week, so I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, I agree. Yeah. So Microsoft just had their Link 2014 conference, and one of sort of the stories that came out that I don't think they were expecting is that Link gathers data just like the NSA and vacuums up this info for domestic surveillance.
Well, no, there was one of the talks at the conference was about how to do this with it.
Yeah, but Link is so...
if it's their corporate phone system, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like your PBX meeting, chat, all in one system. And a lot of enterprise grade systems like this have logging at all levels. Like if you want to know creepy, BlackBerry Enterprise Server, man, you can get really creepy with that thing. Like you can read people's text messages they're sending back and forth to each other right at the administrative console. You can log it all.
That's,
that's how a lot of enterprise software works.
You have a policy saying that you're not supposed to use it for anything private.
I was kind of surprised to see this get as much play as it did, actually.
Well, because from a business perspective, you can see why you would want to do this, right? You can, for example, use this to detect some sales guy grabbing all your information and sending it off. Or, you know, some guy who's sitting at his desk making a bunch of suspicious phone calls. Oh, he's actually looking for a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we want to flag him as a security risk because maybe he's going to steal all of our customer data as he transitions to his new employer. Or, you know, if he's just unhappy with his job, he's a security risk. But also if he's, you know, he might be trying to steal something.
But yeah,
maybe we want to fire him if he's looking for another job.
If you didn't know, kids, if you're using an enterprise product, it's probably got logging up the wazoo. You can take that to the
one of the other interesting examples is you can tell who's dating who by the internal phone calls.
All right, can you break it down? What's going on with bcrypt? I've heard that bcrypt is broken. I mean, what's going on here?
No. So OpenBSD has done a revision of bcrypt.
Okay.
So before we saw all bcrypt hashes started with $2A. It's actually going to be incremented now to $2B because of a flaw that was found. If you remember back, the Solar implementation of bcrypt was found to have a flaw where if you used like UTF-8 characters or something, it was only using the top, the 7 bits, not all 8. And so certain passwords wouldn't work.
Right.
Well, those guys have found in their implementation, it turns out to also apply to the OpenBSD implementation, that if your password is longer than 255 characters, that it doesn't, there's an overflow and it doesn't encrypt properly.
Okay.
So they fixed that, but because it's technically possibly backwards incompatible, they incremented the version.
Gotcha. Doesn't seem too serious then.
So they will change. So OpenBSD 5.5, which is the one that comes out this summer, will support the new version. And then 5.6, when it comes out, will make the new version the default. So once, you know, most machines support the new format, then the new format will become the default. So yeah, it's not broken, and I doubt there are very many people that have passwords longer than 256 characters. But, you know, for the sake of technical correctness, they're going to fix it.
Yeah, good for them. Okay, well, if you got an email from the RBC Royal Bank, don't click the link, right, Alan?
So yeah, this one was a phishing email sent where it claimed to be from the Royal Bank, which is one of the main banks in Canada, targeting you, and it would say, there's a suspicious charge from EasyDNS. Is that you that made that?
Oh, that would
And originally, when EasyDNS heard about it, they thought they were somebody was doing trolling Whois records and only emailing EasyDNS customers. Since there's a good chance that, you know, if you're a customer of the company the spam is saying from and a customer of the bank that it says it's from, that you might, you know, click the link. Right? Because it's saying like, oh, we're going to deny this charge. And it's like, oh, no, don't kill my web hosting or whatever. Or my domain registration.
Yeah.
But it turns out that it was being sent to more people. So they might have just gone to every person that has a domain that might just recognize the name DNS in their thing and try to hit it.
Yeah.
It was always interesting getting all the ones from the American banks and being like, yeah, I don't go there.
Right.
But with Canada only having like 5 major banks, there's a much higher chance that they'll hit on the right bank. But, you know, I have a very specific email address I use for my bank.
And they're playing on something that would get me is my bank these days is blocking charges all the time and oftentimes for online services or purchases. So if I saw that, I would, you know, if it was from a bank that I had.
Right, but if it's from your real bank, it will always say, if this is suspicious, call this number.
True.
It will never, ever, ever want you to click on a link.
Hopefully. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, your bank should never, ever send you a link. Or even if they do, what you should do is separately go to your online banking with the address that you know is right. Never click a link.
Yeah. Good advice, Alan. Good advice. Yeah. Now, nobody knows how to party like an IE 0-day party because they get out in the wild and they just don't stop. What's going on here, Alan?
So yeah, this is CVE 2014-0322, which is a 0-day exploit for IE 9 and 10 that's being used in watering hole attacks, or specifically targeting veterans, including the Veterans of Foreign Wars website and the French Foreign Legion, I think, and a couple other websites, and also targeting military contractors, which I might be their actual target because I imagine a lot of veterans might work related to military contractors as well.
Right.
And so that was it's a watering hole attack. And
according to Symantec, the number of attacks to this vulnerability has increased significantly since February 22nd. So this is happening pretty fast.
Yeah, and so that's using an Internet Explorer one, and there's separately a Flash one, which is actually our next story.
Yeah.
And the nice one with the Flash one, Symantec has made this really nice graphic that explains how a watering hole attack works.
Oh, look at this, yeah.
So it shows this is how the attacker will make a watering hole attack. If the Symantec site will actually load.
Come on, Symantec. Well, I loaded, so their web server probably only supports one person at a time.
Right. So if you see at the top there, you get your attacker, and he's like, I want to target military contractors. What he does is go out and make a list of all the websites he thinks military contractors might go to. Right? Then he starts attacking all of those, seeing if he can't find some vulnerability. And maybe he does find it on one of those sites. Then he can go there and inject some malware. Like, we saw one with it was like the forums. Remember when they got the people at like Facebook and Apple by targeting that iOS forum?
Yep.
So they'll find a flaw in the forum software and inject an iframe that runs a Java exploit, or in this case, a Flash exploit.
Yeah.
And they'll stick it in this popular website that everybody in a certain industry is likely to go to, and then compromise a bunch of those computers.
That it's so simple. You just gotta and really, like in the case of that iOS one, it got some major. They netted major targets: Microsoft, Facebook, and Apple.
Yeah, they got people inside all of those, and then they could, possibly island hop from that to getting even more excessive stuff.
Yeah. Oh, look at. Okay, I see. They have a couple of graphics which are really nice.
Yeah, the one near the bottom is the watering hole attack.
Yeah,
and it kind of shows that it's just like in the savannah, right? The lions wait around the watering hole, and as other animals come to try to get a drink, they eat them.
Yep.
But yeah, they have this nice graphic, and it kind of explains how it works.
You check that out.
The graphic at the top shows how the iframe actually worked and how they were hitting the. They did an iframe that sent you to another website that redirected you to another website that then loaded this Flash exploit, which did a bunch of other stuff.
Speaking of Flash
installed
exploits,
a backdoor on your computer, where then your computer would then connect to the attacker and allow them to do stuff.
As convenient as it would be, our next roundup story is about probing into the depths of a Flash exploit, specifically CVE.
The same one.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. CVE 2014-502.
Yeah, so Symantec talked about how the attack happened, but these researchers at Zscaler went into how the exploit actually works.
Yeah.
So that was definitely interesting if you're into the more nitty-gritty details.
Very good. Very good. Uh-oh. I think my Chrome got crazy, because here's another Bcrypt. Oh, no, this is Bitcrypt.
This is different.
This is good. Okay, so what's going on here?
So if you remember, there was Bitcrypt was one of those viruses that encrypted your files and tried to ransom you for Bitcoin.
Right.
Well, the guys over at Custodian Security have now figured out how to brute force it. It's basically always encrypted with a certain set of keys, and they've managed to break it so that there's an app up on GitHub now so you can decrypt your files.
That's awesome. That's great. Good for them.
And it kind of explains how it works a bit.
Oh, this next one makes me hurt on the inside. Why is U.S. broadband so slow? Verizon said they will not be digging new lines anytime soon. Time Warner's cash flow goes towards paying down debt, not laying down fiber. And AT&T is doing everything they can to slow the deployment of Google Fiber. How can the situation be improved? Mainly by expediting the right-of-way access, permits, and inspections, according to Andy Kessler. That is how Google was able to afford to lay down fiber in Austin, and how VTEL was able to do it in Vermont. So this is something that...
So basically, if the current broadband providers are not going to put any work into making the internet faster.
Yeah. So
the only way to do this is to make it easier for new companies to start up and lay their own fiber.
I hope. It's getting... we had an email that didn't make it into the show today, but the guy was like, my DSL in my area is just... It's atrocious, and everybody's complaining, but they are our only option in this area.
Yep.
And I hear that so much.
I had that problem. Because when I have the cable I have before it got bought by the big national telco was this local company, and they were so good and so loved that the DSL provider didn't even try coming into this part of the city. Now that they're bought by the big evil telco, I still don't have the option of DSL because the DSL guys never tried to come to this part of the city.
Yeah. It's better in Washington, where we might have one or two providers to pick from, but it's either cable or DSL. And
in most places in Canada, you have the choice of cable or DSL. The DSL is only downtown here. I'm up on the mountain, and they've like, we're not going to bother because mountain cable is so awesome.
Up on the mountain. Speaking of another thing that's up on the mountain, Facebook is kind of quietly killing off the Facebook email system that they rolled out like 3 years ago. Do you remember seeing this and rolling your eyes?
Yeah, well, I was like, who would ever use that? And here's a good reason why you shouldn't. The problem with using third-party email is sometimes it'll just go away. So Facebook is shutting down their email service.
Yeah.
Now, that could be really bad news if you were someone that was using that email, especially if you used it to sign up for services.
Yeah.
But it turns out they're going to forward your email to your Facebook registered email.
Oh, okay.
So your email won't just stop working. But I'm sure at some point they'll turn that off as well. So if you're using a @facebook.com email address for anything, you should probably go about changing it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Schneier has a post that I wonder if we won't be hearing a lot more about over the next few years, DDoSing a cell phone network.
Yes. So this one works by basically cloning a SIM card and trying to make calls from a bunch of different places at once and confusing the cell phone network about where the phone actually is on the network, since it's actually in multiple places, and that's not supposed to be able to happen. And it confuses the cell phone network. And if it would happen at a larger scale, you could basically shut down the cell phone network in that area.
Yeah. That's a really interesting idea, just using a clone and just going out in a few different spots.
Yeah. But basically they said they were able to do this with off-the-shelf hardware. So, any sufficiently motivated actor could take out a cell phone network in a large area.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the topic of Schneier on security, he also ran a post that linked to a piece that Brian Krebs did. So it's like this.
Well, no, it's a piece about Brian Krebs.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just
that's pretty great.
Post over at the New York Times about who is this Brian Krebs guy.
Yeah,
and he just highlighted a couple things about it, and it digs into Well,
they're both doing a lot of good work these days.
Okay, him with his feet up on the desk looks a little weird, but
oh, they have a picture. I gotta go look.
Yeah, if you scroll halfway down, he's got this awesome desk, but he's got his feet up in a really awkward look.
Oh, they told him to pose. They're like, okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And did the reporter like climb up on another desk or on a chair? I mean, that's really high
to take that picture. Or he's got like the camera on a stick or something.
Or holding it way over his head. But it's a nice setup.
It is.
Yeah. Well, good. That's cool of Bruce to link to a piece on Brian too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like this is the two main guys we talk about all the time, and all of a sudden they're talking about each other.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
What's going on? Oh, well, I'll have to read that after the show because that looks like a good piece on the New York Times. So I will add that to my read list right now, actually. Mm-hmm. Very good, Alan. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Okay. Well, so a couple of bits to cover. We'd love to get your emails. Again, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click on the contact link, choose TechSNAP from the drop-down, send it in. Also the subreddit, links.techsnap.tv. But more important, we'd love to have you live, like our great chat room is right now. You help us name the show. We chat with you in between segments. We're always watching what you guys have to say and incorporating it in the show in real time. Just go over to jblive.tv. We start at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC.
Boom. And, of course, we have it all laid out at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, where you can get it converted to your local time. And if you're on the go or you're sitting somewhere like at your desk and they don't want you streaming video, jblive.info has 64-bit kilobit and 128 kilobit audio-only streams. And there's also apps in the Android Play Store. Just search for Jupiter Broadcasting. There's a couple you can pick from. One is more audio-focused. The other is more video-focused. And they both support live streaming as well. And it's a great way to catch up on the back catalog. All right, Alan, well, you have a great week.
And also, just a reminder, BSD Now is looking for more feedback, too. So if you have questions about BSD or ZFS or anything, send them over to feedback@bsdnow.tv.
Feedback@bsdnow.tv. And send your questions in there. And maybe, are you guys still soliciting tutorials, too?
Oh, yes. If you have an idea for a tutorial, or if even better, if you've written a whole tutorial, send it in and we'll use it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, too. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.